Hi everyone. Welcome to English Story School, where we make learning English fun and engaging through the power of storytelling. Have you ever felt like your mind is a constant storm, thoughts swirling uncontrollably, pulling you in different directions? You might be replaying an old argument, second-guessing decisions you made days ago, or worrying about what could go wrong in the future. If you're nodding along right now, trust me, I've been there. And like many of you, I used to think that the only way out was to wrestle with those thoughts, analyze them, fix them, solve them. But what if I told you that the real secret to finding peace and clarity lies not in engaging with those thoughts, but in ignoring them altogether? Let me take you back to a time when I thought I had to listen to every single thought that crossed my mind. There was a constant pressure to analyze, evaluate, and make sense of everything, no matter how small or insignificant. I would wake up already feeling overwhelmed, my mind flooded with racing thoughts. Work, relationships, goals, things that hadn't even happened yet, all competing for my attention, all demanding a response. It felt like I was chasing my own mind, always trying to figure out how to fix something that wasn't even broken. It wasn't just exhausting, it was paralyzing. I was stuck in a loop, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts that never really took me anywhere. I felt like I was constantly reacting to my own mind, rather than taking control of it. I was sitting there in the middle of another overwhelming moment, with my thoughts racing. I was used to being trapped in my mind, constantly trying to solve problems, analyze emotions, and make sense of every fleeting idea. My brain never seemed to stop, and every thought seemed urgent, like it demanded my attention. But then something unexpected happened. I was introduced to an idea that, at first, sounded almost too simple to be true. It sounded so counterintuitive, I almost dismissed it entirely. The idea was this: you don't have to listen to every thought that comes into your head. In fact, you don't even need to respond to them. You can actually ignore them. Yes, you heard that right. Ignore them. At first, this idea felt like a rebellion against everything I had ever learned about productivity, mental health, and self-awareness. The idea that I didn't have to engage with my thoughts, that I didn't have to chase down every single idea or emotion, felt almost irresponsible. How could I ignore my thoughts? Wasn't it our job to process everything? To confront our inner demons and wrestle with the problems of our mind until we figured them out? And that's when the breakthrough hit me. What if I didn't have to engage with every thought? What if I could simply let some of them pass by, like clouds drifting through the sky? It felt so alien at first, but as I started to explore this concept, I realized something incredibly powerful. Not every thought is worth your attention. Think about it. How many times a day do you find yourself obsessing over something that doesn't even matter? You might think about that awkward conversation you had with a friend last week, replaying the words in your head, wondering if you said something wrong. Or perhaps you're worrying about something that might happen tomorrow, something you have no control over. And what do you gain from it? Anxiety, stress, a sense of being overwhelmed. These thoughts don't move you forward. They don't make you any smarter or more prepared for the future. In fact, they often do the exact opposite. They distract you from what's happening right now, cloud your judgment, and create unnecessary emotional turmoil. But what if, instead of reacting to these thoughts, you simply let them pass by? What if you treated them like passing cars on the street, acknowledging their presence but not engaging with them? What if you chose to redirect your focus to something that actually mattered? I know it sounds simple, maybe even too simple, But this idea had a profound impact on me. I began to realize that by ignoring thoughts that were unimportant or unhelpful, I was giving myself permission to live in the present moment. And the more I practiced this, the more I noticed how much mental space it freed up. I wasn't caught in endless loops of worry and self-doubt anymore. Instead, I could focus on what was happening right in front of me, whether it was a meeting at work, a conversation with a friend, or just enjoying a quiet moment with myself. It wasn't about suppressing my thoughts or pretending they didn't exist. It wasn't about bottling up my emotions or avoiding difficult feelings. It was about understanding that not every thought needed to be analyzed, examined, or acted upon. It was about giving myself the freedom to choose which thoughts I wanted to give my energy to and which ones I could let go of. And that's when I realized something even more profound. The more you ignore the irrelevant thoughts, the more control you have over the ones that really matter. For example, when I stopped engaging with my negative self-talk, I found space for positive thoughts to emerge. When I stopped obsessing over potential problems that hadn't even happened yet, I began to appreciate what was right in front of me. I was able to focus more clearly, make better decisions, and feel calmer in the face of life's challenges. It was like I had been carrying a heavy weight on my shoulders, and by simply ignoring the thoughts that didn't serve me, I was able to release that burden. In a world that constantly demands our attention, where we're bombarded by notifications, social media, work pressures, and the constant noise of our own minds, the ability to choose which thoughts deserve our energy is a game changer. The key takeaway here is this: you don't have to engage with every thought. Not all of them are useful, and many of them are just distractions. By choosing not to respond to the ones that don't serve you, you're freeing up space for the thoughts that actually move you forward. You're allowing yourself to think more clearly, feel more present, and take action that aligns with your true goals and desires. It might sound simple, but in reality, it's a powerful shift in mindset. And once you start practicing it, you'll be amazed at how much more control you have over your life. So, take a step back and ask yourself, the next time you're overwhelmed with thoughts racing through your mind, which ones are truly worth your attention? I'll be honest, when I first heard this idea, ignore your thoughts, don't engage with them, it sounded completely ridiculous. I mean, think about it. Our entire lives were taught the opposite, right? From the moment we're old enough to understand, we're conditioned to confront things head on. Don't avoid your problems. Don't ignore your emotions. You need to face them, deal with them, solve them. If you're feeling anxious, you address it. If you're afraid, you confront it. If you have a problem, you fix it. That's what we're told. That's what we're expected to do. We're told that self-awareness is the key to personal growth, that understanding our thoughts and emotions is the first step toward overcoming them. If you ignore something, it'll only get worse, right? Isn't that what society teaches us? If you try to avoid discomfort or bury your emotions, they'll just bubble up, cause problems, and explode later. And that's the framework I had been operating in for years. Every time a troubling thought or emotion surfaced, I tried to analyze it, understand it, break it down. I assumed that the only way to regain control over my life and my mind was to constantly dissect, challenge, and confront my feelings. But what if I was wrong? At first, this idea of ignoring my thoughts felt completely counterintuitive to everything I'd learned. It felt almost like a cop-out, like taking the easy way out. How could ignoring something solve anything? How could I get clarity, peace, or control by not engaging with my inner world? Here's where the shift began to happen. I realized that it wasn't about avoiding or suppressing my thoughts. Ignoring them wasn't the same as pushing them aside or pretending they didn't exist. It wasn't about pretending I didn't feel the emotions or experience the challenges that came with those thoughts. It was about choosing not to engage with them. Now, that's a subtle but powerful distinction. Because the moment you engage with a thought, especially a negative or distracting one, you give it power. You give it your attention, your energy, and in a sense, you breathe life into it. That one fleeting thought can start to take over, building on itself, growing bigger and more persistent, until it consumes your entire focus. It can spiral into an endless loop of analysis, worry, and self-doubt. But when you decide not to engage, when you consciously choose not to react to that thought, not to give it more energy, it loses its power. It's like a pebble tossed into a lake. At first, it creates ripples, but without further attention, those ripples fade away and the lake becomes calm again. It was hard to accept this at first. I kept asking myself, is this really the answer? Shouldn't I be digging deeper, analyzing why I feel this way, finding the root cause of my anxiety, and fixing it? Isn't that how I'm supposed to regain control over my thoughts and emotions? The idea of simply ignoring them seemed too easy, too passive. It didn't feel proactive enough. How could it possibly lead to personal growth or clarity? But then I started reflecting on the countless times I had spent trying to fix every little thought or emotion that popped up. The times when I overanalyzed situations until they became more complicated than they needed to be. The times when I tried to make sense of every fear, every worry, as though unraveling the mystery would somehow provide the answers. It was exhausting. It was draining. And in many ways, it kept me stuck in the very cycle I was trying to escape from. The real breakthrough came when I realized something important. Not every thought deserves your attention. Not every emotion needs to be dissected or solved. Some thoughts are just passing clouds, moments of mental chatter that show up uninvited and disappear on their own if you don't give them attention. By choosing not to engage, you break the cycle of overthinking and you free yourself from the need to constantly fix everything. It's like when you're walking down the street and someone tries to start a conversation with you. If you don't engage, the conversation dies. It's over. But if you stop and engage, it might lead to a whole series of questions, discussions, or even conflict. Similarly, when a thought arises and you choose not to engage with it, it loses its hold on you. It's not about denying your feelings or emotions. It's about deciding that not every thought or feeling needs to be addressed immediately. Now, you might still be wondering, is this really the solution? How can ignoring my thoughts be the key to finding peace? Here's what I've learned. By ignoring unhelpful thoughts, you create space for the ones that really matter, the ones that align with your values, your goals, and the present moment. Instead of letting negative or distracting thoughts hijack your mental energy, you have the ability to choose where to direct your attention. And that, my friends, is where true power lies. You're not suppressing or running away from your emotions. You're simply choosing not to let them dictate your life. You're no longer at the mercy of every passing thought. And in that space, you find true control, the ability to focus on what truly matters, to make decisions based on clarity, not emotional impulse, and to navigate life with intention rather than reaction. So yes, at first it felt absurd. Ignoring thoughts seemed like the last thing I should be doing. But the more I practiced it, the more I realized sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to simply let the noise fade away and choose where to place your attention. In doing so, you take back control over your life, your mind, and your emotional well-being. But here's the truth I didn't realize until I started practicing it. Not every thought needs your attention. In fact, most of the thoughts that flood our minds every single day, those thoughts that we often give so much weight to, are nothing more than mental noise. They're like background static that distracts us from what really matters. It's like when you're trying to listen to music, but there's static interference in the background. No matter how much you try to focus, the noise makes it harder to hear the melody, to enjoy the rhythm, or to truly connect with the music. The same is true with our thoughts. We have all these mental static thoughts popping into our heads, uninvited and often unwanted. And yet, we feel compelled to entertain them. They show up like unannounced guests at a party, demanding our attention, but offering us nothing of value in return. Some of these thoughts are completely random. Maybe you suddenly remember an embarrassing moment from years ago, or you get an image in your mind of something happening tomorrow, something you can't even control. And before you know it, you're lost in that thought, overanalyzing it, replaying it, allowing it to take up mental real estate. What I didn't realize at first is that these thoughts don't serve us. They don't move us forward. They don't help us make better decisions or gain clarity. They don't give us answers or bring us peace. In fact, most of the time, they do the opposite. They clutter our minds, cloud our judgment, and keep us trapped in cycles of overthinking. Imagine you're trying to work on a project or you're having a deep conversation with someone you care about, and suddenly your mind starts racing with all kinds of irrelevant thoughts. Maybe you're wondering if your coworker is annoyed with you, or you start worrying about the outcome of a conversation you had days ago. In those moments, you're not focused on the present, on the task at hand, or on the person in front of you. Instead, you're pulled away by thoughts that have nothing to do with what you're actually experiencing. They hijack your attention, drain your energy, and take away from the important things you could be thinking about. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We tend to believe that all thoughts deserve our attention, that every thought is important. But over time, I learned that this couldn't be further from the truth. Think of your thoughts like visitors. Some come to offer you value, wisdom, insights, ideas that propel you forward. But many others are just passing through with no real reason to stay. They show up uninvited. They try to engage you, but they're just noise. The more you entertain them, the more they stick around. It's like leaving the door open for every random person who walks by, inviting them into your home, offering them tea, and allowing them to stay as long as they want. But they never really contribute anything meaningful. Take, for instance, the mental loops of self-doubt. How many times have you caught yourself replaying a conversation over and over again, wondering if you said something wrong, or second-guessing how someone might have perceived you? These thoughts have a way of sneaking in, often without warning, and convincing you that you need to figure it out. You might spend hours, sometimes days, trying to decode that conversation, analyze the tone of the other person's voice, or convince yourself that you did the right thing. But in reality, these thoughts don't serve you. They don't help you improve or grow. They just keep you stuck in a mental loop, spinning your wheels without actually going anywhere. Or think about the thoughts that fill your mind with unnecessary worry. What if I fail? What if something goes wrong? What if people don't like me? These are common thoughts, right? But the more attention we give them, the more power they have over us. We start imagining worst-case scenarios, even when those scenarios are highly unlikely. And in doing so, we not only create stress and anxiety for ourselves, but we also limit our ability to be present and focused on what's actually in front of us. The truth is, many of these thoughts, whether they're about past mistakes, future worries, or random fears, are nothing but distractions. They keep us from tapping into our true potential because they prevent us from staying in the present moment, from focusing on the here and now. They drain our energy by pulling us into mental spaces that are irrelevant to our goals or our well-being. Now, I'm not saying that every thought should be dismissed. There are, of course, important thoughts that require our attention, insights, ideas, decisions that need to be made. But it's the constant barrage of meaningless, unproductive thoughts that can overwhelm us. And the more you entertain those thoughts, the more they steal your mental energy. They create mental clutter, and before you know it, your mind is like a crowded room with no space to think clearly. The key, then, is discernment, learning to recognize which thoughts are serving you and which ones are just noise. And once you identify the noise, you can consciously choose not to engage with it. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes to let those irrelevant thoughts fade into the background, like a song you can barely hear playing in another room. Here's an example. The other day, I was preparing for a big presentation. Just as I was about to go in, my mind started flooding with doubts. What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if people don't like my ideas? What if I mess up? At that moment, I had two choices. I could get caught up in the worry, spiraling into a panic that would only undermine my confidence, or I could recognize that these were just distractions, thoughts that had no real purpose other than to create fear and anxiety. So, I chose to ignore them. I took a deep breath, focused on the task at hand, and stepped into the room with calm and clarity. It wasn't that the thoughts went away entirely, but by not giving them my energy, they had no power over me. They were just passing through. And that's when I realized, the more we practice ignoring the noise, the more we create space for the thoughts that really matter. Those that empower us, motivate us, and help us grow. It's a game changer, honestly. Recognizing that not every thought deserves your attention is the first step toward taking control of your mind and your energy. By giving less attention to the mental clutter, you make room for the insights and ideas that actually move you forward in life. You stop wasting energy on things that don't serve you, and you start investing that energy in what truly matters. So, the next time you catch yourself spiraling into a cycle of unproductive, negative thoughts, remember this: you don't have to engage. Let the noise fade away and choose to focus on what truly deserves your attention. Think of it this way: imagine you're in a room and the room is filled with voices. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them, all speaking at once. Some voices are loud, some are quiet, some are urgent, and some are just nonsense. Now, picture this: you're trying to have a meaningful conversation with someone in that same room. How would you feel? Overwhelmed, right? You'd be drowning in the noise. No matter how hard you tried to focus on the one conversation that actually matters, all those other voices would pull your attention away. Every time you start to concentrate, another voice demands your attention. It's impossible to have a clear thought or make any progress. This is what it's like when we constantly give attention to every passing thought in our minds. Our thoughts, just like those voices, come and go. They're always present, always buzzing in the background, and they don't ask for permission to enter our minds. Some of them are important. Thoughts about the tasks we need to accomplish, the people we care about, or the goals we want to achieve. But then there are those other thoughts, like the ones that tell us we're not good enough, or the ones that bring up past mistakes, or the ones that create worries about things we can't even control. These thoughts are like those random voices in the room, pulling us away from what truly matters. At first, it seems impossible to ignore them. Every thought feels like it deserves attention, like we need to analyze it, react to it, or engage with it somehow. We believe that the more we pay attention to those thoughts, the more control we'll have over them. But here's the kicker. The more attention you give to those thoughts, the louder and more persistent they become. It's like trying to have a conversation in that crowded room of voices. The more you focus on one voice, the more the other voices start shouting even louder to get your attention. They overwhelm you. They drown out the clarity you need to focus on the important stuff. This is what happens when we react to every thought. We don't let them pass. We engage with them. And the more we engage, the more energy we give them. They don't just disappear. They grow, expand, and multiply. It becomes a vicious cycle. Now, here's the part where things get interesting. What if instead of reacting to every thought, you let them float by? Think of thoughts like clouds drifting across the sky. Some clouds are big and dark, others are small and fluffy. But no matter how big or small, they all eventually pass. You don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to follow them or engage with them. When I first started practicing this, it felt strange. Thoughts would pop up, negative ones, anxious ones, distracting ones. And my first instinct was to dive in, to chase after them and figure them out. But over time, I realized that by not reacting to those thoughts, they simply faded away. They didn't have the power to control me anymore. The more I practiced, the easier it became to simply let the thoughts come and go, like clouds floating across the sky. The more I didn't engage with them, the more space I created for the thoughts that actually mattered, the ones that aligned with my values, my goals, and my purpose. You see, the key to this shift isn't about trying to stop thoughts from coming in, because that's impossible. The mind is constantly active, and thoughts will always pop up. What matters is how we choose to respond to them. If we react to every single one, we'll always feel overwhelmed. But if we simply observe them, acknowledge them, and then let them pass, we regain control over our mental space. Here's a simple example to illustrate this. Picture yourself driving down a road. As you drive, cars whiz by in the opposite direction. Some cars are fast, some are slow, some are loud, and some are barely noticeable. You're aware of them, but they don't distract you from the road ahead. You don't have to engage with every car that passes by. You don't have to think about them, chase them, or let them take you off course. You stay focused on your destination. Your thoughts work the same way. They're like those passing cars. Some of them are loud, urgent, and demand your attention, but you don't need to engage with every single one. You simply observe them and continue on your path, focused on what's in front of you. Now, imagine the opposite. What if you let every passing car take your attention? What if every time a car whizzed by, you tried to figure out where it was going, or whether you were driving too fast or too slow in comparison? Suddenly, the road becomes chaotic. You lose your focus, and it's hard to make any progress. The same thing happens when we react to every thought. The road gets foggy, and we lose sight of the destination. So, how do you begin? The next time a thought pops into your head, instead of immediately reacting, Take a moment to just observe it. Notice it, but don't get attached to it. Don't chase it. Let it float by like a cloud passing across the sky. The more you practice this, the easier it becomes. And eventually, you'll realize that the thoughts you once gave so much energy to lose their power over you. The key is this: you're in control of where you place your attention. Not every thought deserves to be entertained. By choosing not to react, you create mental space for the things that truly matter, the things that bring you clarity, peace, and progress. And the more you practice this, the less noise you'll hear. You'll start to hear your own voice, your own purpose, loud and clear above the chaos. The more you choose not to react, the quieter the mental noise becomes, and the clearer your path will be. I remember the first time I consciously tried this approach. I was in a meeting, feeling my mind spiral into a sea of self-doubt. I started questioning every word I was about to speak, worrying about how my colleagues might perceive me. My thoughts were racing, and I could feel my anxiety rising. It was hard to stay present, to focus on what was actually happening in the moment. But then I paused. I reminded myself, I don't have to engage with this. I decided to ignore the noise in my mind, to simply observe it without reacting. And in that moment, I realized something incredible. By not engaging with my racing thoughts, I was able to fully tune into the conversation. I could focus on the facts, listen to what was being said, and contribute in a much clearer, more grounded way. It wasn't magic, but it was a shift from being controlled by my mind to being in control of where I place my attention. That's when it hit me. We don't need to react to every thought that comes our way. Many of our thoughts are just distractions, background noise that doesn't serve us. By ignoring them, we clear space for the thoughts that truly matter, the ones that guide us, help us grow, and align us with our goals. Now, I won't lie and say that this is easy. Our brains are wired to think constantly. We're always processing information, often without even realizing it. But the more I practiced the art of ignoring, the easier it became to let those irrelevant thoughts pass by. It's like driving down the road and seeing a car cut you off. You don't have to slam on your brakes. You don't have to get angry. You can just keep driving, knowing that the road ahead is still there for you. And that's exactly how it works with your thoughts. The more you practice ignoring the irrelevant ones, the more you reclaim your power. You become less reactive and more intentional with where you direct your energy. It's about recognizing that you get to choose what you give attention to, and where you place that attention determines where your energy flows. So, next time your mind starts to race, and you find yourself spiraling into worry or self-doubt, pause for a moment. Don't engage. Don't fight the thoughts. Just observe them. Watch them fade away, as they inevitably will. The more you do this, the more you'll realize that you have the power to shape your mental landscape. And remember, where your attention goes, that's where your energy follows. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.